I'm often reminded of a story, maybe not often enough. It's about a CEO. The man had run several incredibly successful companies and was very wealthy as a result. He had all the cars he could drive. He had a large house and several vacation homes. He was well known and well respected by his peers, and he could afford just about anything he desired. There was a problem, though. His work demanded most of his time and attention, and with every passing year, his wife felt the distance between her and her husband grow. She saw her children being denied the relationship they needed from a father who was never there. One day, the man's wife gave him an ultimatum. She was not going to wait until he retired for her to finally have her husband back, or for their children, who would be grown up by then, to have a father. She wanted them to spend more time together as a family. Otherwise, she would leave him. At the thought of losing his family, the thing that mattered most to him, the CEO agreed to create more space for them to connect, starting with a family vacation to Mexico. It was exactly what they needed. As the week-long vacation was coming to a close, the CEO realized how much he had enjoyed putting down his laptop and phone to take up the role of husband and father. He loved seeing the smiles on his children's faces as they explored and adventured together as a family. He felt the joy of sitting down for dinner with his family that he loved so much, but had nevertheless neglected for so long. It was the evening of their last day in Mexico, and the CEO decided he'd walk down the beach to take in the sunset by himself and contemplate what a more balanced life would look like when they returned home. He walked quite far down the beach and eventually rounded the rocky point at the end. He came around the rocky point, which opened up into a beautiful small beach cove. It was empty, except for a small boat pulled up on the shore and a lone man sitting against a pile of driftwood on the sand watching the sunset. As the CEO got closer, he could see that the man was about his age. He was a local, and he was drinking from a small jar. By his side were 2 fish laid out on a cloth. The CEO approached the man and asked what he was doing out here all by himself. The man replied that he had just finished work and he was watching the sunset while drinking his favorite wine. The CEO, realizing that he was quite tired from walking so far, asked the man if he wouldn't mind if he sat down for a moment to watch the sunset and rest. The man said yes, of course, and the two began talking. As is the custom, the CEO asked the man what he did for work. The man lifted his hand, pointing down the beach at the boat pulled up on the sand, and said, "I am a fisherman. These are my 2 fish for the day. 1 fish I'll take home to feed my family, and the other fish my son will take to the market tomorrow to sell." The CEO was very curious and asked why the fisherman didn't bother catching more than 2 fish. The fisherman said 2 fish was enough. It allowed him to provide for his family and, more importantly, spend less time fishing and more time with them. The CEO couldn't help himself, asking if he'd ever considered buying another boat and hiring another man to fish for him. The fisherman said no and asked why he would want to do that. The CEO responded, "So you can bring in 4 fish a day, of course. 1 for your family, 1 to pay your employee, and now you can sell 2 at the market each day. You make twice as much profit." The fisherman asked, why would he ever want to do that? And the CEO responded, "Well, you see, you take the profits from the extra fish, you save them up, and eventually you can buy a 3rd boat." The fisherman asked, why would he want to do that? The CEO responded, "With a 3rd boat, now you are able to sell 4 fish a day at the market." And the fisherman asked, why would he want to do that? And the CEO responded, You save the profits from the third boat until you can buy a fourth, then save the profits from that boat to buy a fifth, and then a sixth, and so on. This is a repeatable process, my friend. And the fisherman asked, why would he want to do that? The CEO responded, eventually you could have a fleet of boats, not small boats either. With enough time, you could have a large commercial fishing fleet. And the fisherman asked, why would he want to do that? Then you could invest your profits on land. You buy a large property and build a fish processing plant. Then you don't just catch the fish in the sea, because now you're processing and shipping them all over the country and eventually the world. And the fisherman asked, why would he want to do that? The CEO responded, well, once you've built a company of that size, you can take it public. People will invest their money into buying a small part of your business, and it'll generate hundreds of millions of dollars that will go directly into your pocket. And the fisherman asked, why would he want to do that? And the CEO responded, with that much money in your bank account, you could retire somewhere beautiful and spend your days with your family and your evenings drinking wine and watching the sunset. Sometime in my 20s, a switch was flicked. All of a sudden, I wanted success, wealth, prosperity, abundance. The specifics of how that looked changed as years rolled on, but those words to describe what I wanted remained the same. My vision narrowed. Everything that didn't fit into the vision of what I wanted to achieve was neglected or shut out entirely. My friends, my family, my hobbies, myself, all sacrificed on the altar of success. The carrot on a stick. Leading me away from the truth, something I believe a lot of people, especially men, find too painful to accept, but I'll come back to that later. I thought I needed to prove myself financially and materially to be a generative man in this world in order to earn love and respect. In order to feel like I was actually a man and not a boy. I didn't deserve to have people in my life or hobbies to enjoy until I suffered through the grind of what it takes to transform myself into a success. And I looked forward to my triumphant return, at which point I'd finally make room for the things my heart was being denied. There were many twists in the path from the time that switch was first flipped until now. I walked down many dead ends, but I was also given many opportunities. I tried and failed a few times to start my own business. Eventually, I did achieve my income goal working at a corporate job. I don't think there was more than a mere moment of celebration before moving my income goal higher. Later on, I hit that one as well, and I was no happier for it, so I kept moving the goalpost. "15 years came and went. I was working my corporate job for a company I'd worked with for a decade. They paid me very well, but the work was destroying my soul. I told myself there must be more for me in this world than to be a corporate slave. And then one day, just like that, I was laid off. The golden handcuffs were taken from my wrists, and I was set free to do with my life whatever I felt in my heart compelled to do. And so, I decided to do exactly the same thing I'd been doing for the last 10 years, only this time I was going to work twice as hard and put in twice as many hours because this time it would be my own business. As with the decades that came before, I prayed to God for success with my venture. Financial success, material success. I failed, miserably. After a few months, I was out of money. I continued, trying to breathe life into the business. After a few more months, I owed more money than I could have ever imagined I'd owe. If you had asked me when I was 25, on that fateful day when the switch was first flicked, and I set off to make myself a success, what my life would look like when I turned 40, it would have been something along the lines of having a profitable business, maybe a few nice cars, and a big house where I lived with my loving wife and my children. And of course, I'd have a dog or two. Instead, here I was, days away from turning 40, and I had no money, no job, no way to pay rent. I had lost all hope. I wanted to dig a hole in the earth, crawl into it, and hide from the world until the end of time. I was ashamed, and I was deeply, deeply embarrassed. My life was an abject failure. I was an abject failure. The one thing I told myself I would do, the thing that I had sacrificed so much for, I had failed at, again, and for the final time. The morning of my 40th birthday, brushing my teeth in the bathroom of the apartment I'd soon have to leave, I could not bring my head up to meet the gaze of my own eyes in the mirror. I didn't want to be around anyone. I felt so ashamed of who I'd become. The thought of my family, my girlfriend, my friends seeing me the same way that I saw myself filled me with such gut-wrenching shame and embarrassment that I contemplated skipping town overnight with no goodbyes and no explanation. But until then, it was a sunny day, and one of my best friends had invited me out for a bike ride. I knew I needed it. We biked down a stretch of beach that, when the sun is shining and the winds are calm, as it was that morning, it is so unimaginably beautiful that it never ceases to take you out of your head and put you back where you belong, in the moment, seeing and living the world from your heart. It was exactly what I needed. We returned from our ride, and I invited my friend upstairs so that he could have one of the pieces of cake my girlfriend had been making while we were out. We went upstairs, and I opened the door to the apartment, and there, from wall to wall to wall to wall, was a crowd of faces. The faces of my friends who I loved and meant the world to me. The same faces that I was only a few hours previous, ready to leave forever without saying goodbye, simply because of something so ridiculous as my pride, because I didn't want them to see me in my shame. My girlfriend had organized a surprise 40th birthday party for me. It took every fiber of my being not to break down into tears on the spot. That morning, I woke up thinking about how much I had lost, how much I had failed, how unworthy I was. I told you that for 2 decades, I had been praying to God for wealth and abundance, for success, and my prayers were answered. And in fact, that divine providence had been there for me all along. It took losing everything for me to realize that I had it all. I'm reminded of a quote by Earl Nightingale that goes something like, "The things that we can replace at any time, cars, jobs, houses, we place a tremendous amount of value on. It's what we'll mourn when they are gone, what money could never buy, that we take for granted. Friends, family, community. The people you have in your life are the acres of diamonds that lay directly beneath your feet." I mentioned earlier the truth that most people, especially men, are too afraid to hear. It was the case for me, and it still is if I'm being honest, but I'm working on it. As you go out into the world, sacrificing your life in connection with others on the altar of success, all so that you can triumphantly return one day in the future to create a life that you finally feel worthy of living and sharing with others. The people you would live and share it with are already here, ready for you to be exactly as you are, with all of your imperfections, but also all the great things that make you you. If you decide to set lofty goals of success and embark on the journey toward achieving them, you may get lucky enough to be one in a million who achieves that high level of success. You may get luckier still, and upon arriving at your destination, realize the emptiness that material wealth and possessions you worked so hard for hold for you. And if you are truly lucky, if you have the kind of luck that feels like divine intervention somehow played a role, you may be gifted with a mirror with which to see yourself the same way those who love you do. And in the reflection, all the meaningful gifts you left behind on the path toward your meaningless material goals. The truth that I have had a hard time accepting, but nevertheless is true, is that it's simultaneously you that you are running from, and you that you are trying to prove all of this to. You are running from who you are right now, the inadequate, unlovable failure. You are exhaustedly running towards the vision of a perfect version of yourself that would finally, in your eyes, be worthy of the love, the life, and the connection that you so desperately crave. If only we could see and love ourselves as deeply and unconditionally as we see and love our friends and family. Maybe then we'd stand a better chance at not chasing the carrot on the stick. Maybe we could take a breath, sit down to rest on the warm sand, and enjoy the sunset with a glass of wine in hand, realizing everything that we could ever possibly want is already here for us to enjoy, appreciate, and truly connect with.